297 of the 20-Minute Tim's flagship podcast. I'm your host Jamie, joined by Stephen.
What's happening?
And Martin Melly.
Hello.
And we've navigated it. We have navigated a cup tie as well.
Manipulated.
Yes. Oh yeah, let me correct. Celtic have manipulated their way into the Scottish Cup semi-final. Look, that is the most remarkable piece of commentary I think I've ever heard, and it went under the radar because no one sort of corrected them on it. But it was remarkable. Was it Stephen Craigan?
Stephen Craigan. He's an underrated weirdo, isn't he, when it comes
Really
to commentary?
weird.
Very, very strange man.
He is. He was mildly obsessed with Starfelt as well. Like, no matter what Starfelt did during the whole match, Craigan had something to say negative about it. I'm like, is something going on between you two? Did you has he not replied to one of your DMs on Insta? Did you ask him for a signed shirt and he's not giving you it?
It was strange. He must have used the word by accident, or he meant to say something else, because you can't even manipulate your way into a semi-final winning 3-0 and not letting a team have a shot on target.
I think his reference there was because we'd got a deflection and a couple of sort of uncoordinated goals or something. But the bottom line is, Stephen, we absolutely murdered Dundee United.
Yeah, it's 3-0. I think we might be giving Stephen Craigan too much credit, though. What I think he probably meant to say was manoeuvred into the next round rather than manipulated. So? Well, it's the only thing that makes any grammatical sense. Manipulated their way into the next round is absolutely nonsensical.
That sounds like you're calling Stephen Craigan the idiot's idiot.
Well, yeah. And the thinking man's idiot, Michael Stewart, before the game, I believe, said something about... I didn't catch the start of this coverage because we were doing our big match build-up on Patreon. We were live on Patreon to our patrons, and I didn't catch it, but I heard via a neutral, someone who supports Partick Thistle, that Michael Stewart was once again on his horse about how Cameron Carter-Vickers would be an inferior signing to John Souttar for Celtic. Now, he's done this before.
Currently injured.
Yeah. So he's done this before and apparently was back on it before. Again, can't verify it. I didn't see it, but just yet more tiring over-analysis of our centre-half pairing.
Two things. I bet Michael Stewart does own a horse. He looks horsey. And the second thing is, this is the second week in a row we've had to go at opposition commentary teams. Not the competition, but the opposition. It's the second week in a row. But I have to say, I remember a couple of weeks ago, Ange said, you're all obsessed with decisions here. After the game, I think it was the BBC, they were interviewing Tam Courts, and they said to him about the Hatate tackle, but it was so leading. The interviewer went, what about that Hatate tackle there? Must be furious.
You must be raging.
You must be raging about that. I know the ref only...
you're going to take that?
Basically, it was that. He goes, I know the ref only gave a yellow, but you must be fuming. And to be fair to him, Tam went, look, I was angry at the time, but I've not had a chance to see the replay. I don't really think the commentators can be too disappointed though, because I don't really know what more you expect from Celtic. And as you say, Melly, Dundee United never really had a shot on goal.
No, they didn't. It was controlled again from Celtic. You're a wee bit, went into the game a wee bit worried. Obviously, it's a cup game. The last tie to be played, that never had Celtic, Rangers, Hearts and Hibs been in the semi-final together in the Scottish Cup. And it's Dundee United away. They've posed us problems this season already. We've failed to beat them once, so you're like, maybe it's one of those games, Jota and Abada been out, but once Celtic got into their sort of rhythm in the first half and got that early goal, you never really felt worried about Dundee United because they weren't creating any chances. No. I can't remember anything. The only wee slight concerns was Joe Hart's passing out from the back that was putting Starfelt on the back foot a couple of times, but apart from that, nothing. They're very blunt up front, Dundee United. They've been the sort of draw kings this season. They'll draw, they'll really struggle to score goals, but they don't concede too many either. And look, Celtic got what they deserved. They were clear winners in that game.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure how to take this game, the preparation for it, because of what felt like an unprecedented 6 months between games for Celtic. So it's one of those, I can't really gauge it. Where does the slider go in the rust to good preparation go? Because we often play against teams that are in like pre-season, like the European games, the Scandinavian teams against and stuff like that, where we think, well, they've not played for ages, so they'll be rusty. But then there's also but they'll be fresh. So where does the slider go when you've had 8 games or 8 days off rather? So I was wondering, like, you'd think a few extra days training will be good, but will we have lost the rhythm going into this?
I think it did us quite good. I think the extra time off, it obviously seemed to, and I think the reason we struggled in that game probably wasn't so much the team, but the pitch was awful. And Ange commented on it after the game. In fact, got to see this, one of the old Celtic clickbait sites, they got me a belter today. It was the one thing Ange was disappointed in following Dundee United, and I was like, I wonder what he's What tactical insight am I going to get here? And then I clicked the article. You got me. I clicked it and I only enjoyed it. And it was just the comments lifted from the BBC article where he went, the pitch wasn't great. I was like, fucking furious, man. But he was right.
You contributed to that.
I know. I'm furious. The pitch was an absolute shanner.
Anne's listed biggest disappointment, Alton Towers. The pitch was it's nothing new, isn't it? It's like, I feel like we're playing a lot of these absolutely terrible pitches. It's a pretty common occurrence, but
I thought Dundee United were meant to be like the footballing side. I thought this was Tam Courtsy's thing and he wanted his team to play. But I mean, they played some decent stuff at Celtic Park. So what am I alluding to, Stephen? Do you think it was maybe deliberate? Do you think he says, look, let that cut up a wee bit? We've got Celtic coming to town in a few weeks.
I don't know if we can necessarily talk though, because Celtic Park isn't looking the greatest recently. It's looking diseased again from Brendan Rodgers.
£6 million Brendan Rodgers. Super Galaxy brain pitch.
Like a new signing. The multi-million-pound
That's
pitch.
a quote, isn't it?
Oh,
I'm pretty sure someone said that.
Yeah, it was diseased then, and it went into remission for a while, but now it's come roaring back.
Diseased. It's another variant.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal for football, but I think it made for quite a good game. I think that as much as Dundee United didn't really threaten much, didn't really create an awful lot, there was a period in the game, certainly in the first half, where it was kind of back to front, or so it seemed, in that Dundee United kept breaking away, and it was like it made the game feel quite intense, even though they weren't really creating any chances or anything like that. It seemed like it was a kind of back and forth encounter, but no, it was a quite enjoyable game, and Celtic thoroughly deserved the win, to be honest. There can be no complaints about that. There's a few contentious decisions, mainly against Celtic, as we said, and we're going to have the now token referee chat probably during this. But yeah, overall, very, very happy with the performance and progression.
Yeah, just before we get into the referee chat, I think a lot it was to do with the pitch, because the 3 subs that came on done it, every player going forward done it. It was just decision makings in the final third was terrible. That final pass across from Celtic was just missing sometimes, and maybe it is down to the pitch, because every single player was guilty of it. There was James Forrest where it was stuck under his feet when he could have got a shot away. Maeda put a cross over 3 players that were coming in. Every single player up front done it. Like Giakoumakis got 2 goals, but some of the times he got the ball at his feet and was falling over it and all that. You're like, what is going on here? So we'll put it down to the pitch last night, but some of it, just that decision making, Celtic could have been out of sight probably in the first half, because they got themselves into good positions. They just didn't follow through with it. Do
you know what he called Giakoumakis before we switched his cameras on? The best big totty we've had in a long time.
The coup.
That was Stephen. You were pointing at me there.
Oh, right, was it? Yeah. He seems to... He's getting. I like him. I like his work rate. But you said in the post match yesterday, his technique's not the best. He's just scoring lots of goals for us though. Anytime he plays, he scores.
2 Carlton Cole-esque goals they got against the United. In fact, you know what?
Magic of the cup, innit?
Yeah,
Carlton scored,
right. It's Strunar, wasn't it? Or was it? Did he score a header against Strunar? I can't remember. One of the many goals Carlton Cole scored. It's hard
difficult.
It's very difficult to recall individual performances from Carlton Cole. There were so many good ones. But I'm having seen it back and via a discussion on our Discord group, I'm not even convinced they touched the second one. No. I've watched every angle of it, and it's pretty inconclusive as to whether he got a touch. But he's going to claim it off that toty wee guy anyway. Yeah. Get it up, you Karamoko. I'm claiming it, but as any good striker would do. But he gets goals. I can't complain about Giakoumakis at all. I'm a big fan of what he offers to Celtic, because no one else does that. No one else does. I don't say that to try and be patronising. Like when you compare him to Kyogo, he's not got the finesse, obviously, of that. But Kyogo can't offer what Giakoumakis does either, and vice versa. So
probably spurs him on.
Yeah, he's definitely a different option, and the work rate is fantastic from him, which you would expect of anyone in not only a Celtic team but an Ange Postecoglou team in particular.
I think we're getting used to that, aren't we? Like, it's pretty clear that's the thread that goes through every player in Ange's team. Like, you need to work your ass off. I feel
like watching that game as well, I feel like everyone's getting a little bit kind of hardier, if that makes sense. Even got like Greg Taylor, Matt O'Reilly, guys you wouldn't necessarily associate with being like battle hardened or anything like that. They're all getting right stuck in and getting right in about the physical battle of the game, which is important in Scotland. As much as we don't probably like to acknowledge it, it is a big deal here. You can play all the great football you want and all that, but if you don't have the the guts for a fight, then you'll not get very far.
There are a lot of teams and a lot of players within teams, like Butcher and Dundee United, for example, that just exist just to take bits and leave bits on players, don't they?
Yeah, and maybe Hitate's our one after his flying challenge. It's just one of those ones that don't do it. Oh, he's done it. 'Cause you can see it coming a mile off. Couldn't you? He's trying to press two players. I think he's just annoyed at himself for losing the ball earlier on, and he's just flying in like pull out, and kind of did pull out at the end, but you're like, there's no need to make that challenge right on the touchline. But I think that sort of done the game for him, because he wasn't great, but he wasn't bad that you'd think get him off at half time. But just with that yellow card and John beating his ref, you'll maybe like, maybe best to take him off.
It actually doesn't matter. I'm not going to make the joke, Stephen. James Forrest, there was a lot of talk before the game about his contribution of late, came back into the side. Were you pleased with what James brought to the table?
I think, yeah, it was all right. I don't think it was quite as impressive as
shrug.
Yeah,
partridge shrug.
Pretty much. I think it was okay. What I did notice, and Melly's already mentioned Jota and Abada missing for this game, so that narrows the attacking threat and options significantly. Those are Kyogo aside, but Kyogo has been injured for a long time now. Jota and Abada are, I think, pretty much undoubtedly Celtic's two most productive attacking players outside of Kyogo. But as I say, he's been missing for ages.
Has he been injured now for longer than he was in the side?
It feels like it honestly feels like last season. The last time Kyogo played, it feels like ages. But
that was last night with our 4 top goal scorers out.
Is that right? I wasn't sure.
Kyogo and Turnbull, Abada and Jota, I'm sure.
Well, and you still get the job done. There you go. What were you worried about? But what I noticed about Forrest is he's still got a much better touch than Abada.
Yeah.
Now, the contribution between the two players is night and day. Abada has produced an awful lot more than Forrest, and I know he's been injured. I still feel like Forrest is he's still the better footballer, if you know what I mean. Like we had the kind of jokey debate over what's the difference between a more effective footballer and just a better player. I think that's the biggest contrast. That's the biggest example where I think it's quite confusing, because Abada has scored whatever it is, 14 goals or something this season. Forrest has only got two. He scored home and away against Jablonec as well, but that feels like years ago. But Forrest, like some of his wee quick passes inside, he's getting a really lovely cushioned first time pass that opens up space that I really quite enjoy from Forrest. There was one time, I can't remember who it was it Sporle that came on? I'm not sure how you pronounce that, Sporle or something like that. Dundee United came on and really like outpaced Forrest, and I thought, that's something you don't necessarily see from Forrest very often. So that's maybe dwindled a little bit. And in fairness to him, he had kind of pulled up. He did look uncomfortable in terms of maybe a slight niggling injury. He looked as if he was going to go off a hamstring, but his touch is still very, very good for us, and I think it's something that's maybe a little bit undervalued from him.
It's one of these ones where they're both completely different types of player, aren't they? And they add different things to the team. If you're looking for somebody to eliminate fullbacks and get the ball in and get a decent cross in or get the ball into the box, it's probably Forrest. But if you need someone to crop up at the back post with a goal, then there's going to be Abada. And the amount of times that Abada's got us out of a pickle or really contributed in a game, we said it a couple of weeks ago that you just can't deny Abada's contribution to this side anymore. But I think there's a lot of goodwill for James Forrest, isn't there? People want him to do well. And I know in this podcast I've kind of said I'm done with him and I've finished with him, but you know, I'm fronting a wee bit there, Melly. There's part of me that just still wants a guy to come back and do well for us.
Can I just shock you? I like James Forrest despite what I said earlier.
I don't like him, but what I mean is there's part of me that just, I don't want him to be finished. In my heart of hearts, I don't want James Forrest to be finished. In these last couple of games, I thought, well, do you know what? Maybe he's still got something to offer.
I don't think MD's wanting him finished, but it's just what you're watching, and it's not as if we're going off this 1 or 2 games. It was a long time before he contributing like regularly for Celtic, and even then, he done fine last night. It wasn't brilliant, wasn't terrible. The front three were all pretty much the same. Giakoumakis and Maeda should have had a goal, but with Forrest, you're just like, you done well against Livingston, you got that goal, let's have another good performance. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad, so it's another one he's got in the locker. Like, he's got minutes in the legs, and if Abada's going to be out for I think he'll be alright, won't he? But by the way Andrew's talking, but at least with James Forrest, it's not when you're looking at that front three going, oh no, it's really weakened with Forrest in there. You don't quite get that because his last 2 games, so we need as many players fit and firing as possible.
I mean, it's serious
as
business.
We're going into the business end.
It is serious business. I thought Cal McGregor was really good last night. Took his goal from the set piece. We're becoming set piece kings now.
Yeah, set piece specialist, mate. it was well worked for Celtic. We've bemoaned how much we don't score headers from corners, and like, most teams are bigger and more physical than us. But if we're going to do that, then at least this shows we're working on it, because you always hear our Celtic even working on corners. That's twice in the last couple of games we've got a goal from a short corner, and it's worked out well. And good to see that back from Cal McGregor, because he is playing deep. He's not getting as many goals anymore, but he stepped up last night. And just watching him, first half he tailed off a wee. Second half, sorry, tailed off a wee bit. But sometimes when that ball's fired into him from the defenders into midfield, the way he can manipulate the space and turn players to set Celtic off is it's absolutely brilliant. I just love watching him play, the way he just can manoeuvre his body and turn into the space and just get the ball away quickly. It's great to watch, and another captain's performance from him now, because you're looking at Celtic in a Scottish Cup semi. We're already the League Cup holders and we're top of the league. Imagine Cal McGregor in his first season. He's already won a trophy. He's going to be hungry to prove that he can be a really good captain, and he is the driving force of that team.
At the beginning of the season, everyone was talking about trouble. No, you're talking about trebles. That's what Ange said. That's what Ange said after the game.
It's unlike him to say something like that, isn't it?
I think it was a dig. I think it was a dig at the press eye, because people were asking about the treble, and he's like, "No, I'm not getting drawn into this. Use what not so long ago you were all saying that I was out of a job soon, and now
remember people wrote off the title race after about 12 games or something. Less than that, I think it was, because I remember
Ange saying that far behind.
No, I remember Ange saying, "Oh, you call it early in this country."
October, I think. I think it was October they wrote the title race off. Spring has sprung, and our friends at Manscaped have the tools for some spring cleaning in your pants. Trust me, your confidence is going to be blooming like the flowers upcoming this spring. Time to clear out that winter bush and join 4 other million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. If you go to manscaped.com, use the code TIMS, you get 20% off and free shipping at Manscaped. And by using that code, you will also receive 2 free gifts. So head on over to manscaped.com, use code TIMS for 20% off, free shipping, and some free gifts. That's manscaped.com. Okay, we're going to talk about a disallowed goal. Contrary to the rules of the game, the goal was chopped off. The rule is, if there's an accidental handball in the lead up to a goal and it's not the person who accidentally handles it that scores it, then the goal must count. So I would love to know what the referee was thinking there. It's just, there was a thing on Sportsound a couple of weeks ago. We spoke about it in the podcast actually a couple of months ago, and everyone was jumping up and down about referees, and they have been jumping up and down about referees all season, about how bad these guys are. And Tom English of the BBC was just like, "Look, I am not having it. I'm not having these referees called incompetent." That's incompetent. Not knowing the rules, not knowing how you do your job, Stephen, that's the only word for it. It's incompetence.
Yeah, I wasn't sure on this rule. I remember I watched it and I thought that I had some vague notion that they'd changed the handball thing, right? And you've just explained it there. But it was so blatant here that I thought, well, maybe he's spotted offside. Maybe Giakoumakis is marginally ahead of the ball when that's played in, and it's been called off for that reason, because he's obviously interfering with play. That's what I thought. But when it actually, I think you told me actually that the referee had signalled for handball.
Yeah.
I thought that's not how that works, though.
Well, this is it. And I said this on the post-match with Melly. I was like, see, if you want to bring up a point about referees, this is the one to do it on after you've won the game, after you've progressed in the competition.
Yeah.
And it's not a judgment call. The referees know, like, oh, did he see it? Didn't he see it? Or is that a yellow or red? It's borderline. The referee distinctly said, oh, I saw him handball it, so I chopped the goal off that this other player scored. Well, that's not the rule. And then, for me, that's the whole thing with VAR. See, we're refereeing a game and John Beaton's a video assistant referee. The guy doesn't even know the rules. So even if he's watching it on telly, he's still not going to get the decision right.
So could it be interpreted that he has, if I'm given vast benefit of the doubt here, it could be interpreted that he has seen that as a deliberate handball?
No, because he should have booked the player, presumably. Or if he thought it was a deliberate handball, I mean, it's a crazy call. And then there was an offside as well that wasn't the offside. They just guessed.
So however we slice this, basically, it just doesn't work on any level. There's no room for manoeuvring here.
Well, he might have been doing it the spirit of the game, like Michael Stewart suggested at halftime.
What was that? What was that relation to?
Well, it should be a goal, but within the spirit of the game.
Oh, that's right. Michael Stewart
said
the
rules not.
Michael Stewart's point. His point was that it might be within the rules, but it's not within the spirit. And John Beaton, what he does is referee games by the spirit of them and not the rules.
He did well to spot it, but because as soon as it was like, it's been disallowed, you instantly thought, oh, it must be offside. But the linesman didn't flag for anything.
No.
John Beaton's behind that and managed to see the handball. Some eye for that for a guy that misses all sorts all the time,
He's
and then to get the rules wrong as well.
Definitely one of the worst in the league. And look, see when they're pulling decisions like that, Stephen, they can't complain when people are having a go. There is no mystery. It's no made up that people complain about referees in this country.
It'll be forgotten because we've won and progressed, won't it? But
yeah, that's it. Giakoumakis did get on the score sheet twice though.
Yeah, as I say, Carlton Cole-esque performance from him. Two fine finishes. See, in fairness, there was a goal that Celtic scored recently. I think it was Jota at the back post. I can't who that was against. I can't remember. I've all kind of blurred into one of the games recently. But what I said about Jota, it was the defender's presence that made
the Aberdeen game.
Yeah, in fact, that was it. Yeah, it was the defender's presence that put the keeper off, allowing Jota to sneak in. So, let's know. We can't really underestimate or understate the value of Giakoumakis just making himself a nuisance. Now, Siegrist is normally pretty... He's
brilliant against us.
Excellent.
Usually.
I was going to say reliable, but it goes well beyond that against Celtic. He's usually absolutely outstanding. So it was a surprise to see him drop such a clanger like that. But maybe it is just the big man, the coup, in there making a nuisance of himself.
I mean, we were due one for Siegrist, weren't we? Because he's been brilliant
definitely.
against us many a time.
He's a good keeper, really good shot stopper. And I think we've even spoke about maybe signing him as a backup keeper because he's out of contract in the summer. But with Giakoumakis, as I think it was last week I spoke about Maeda, he gets himself into really dangerous positions. And what is that, 8 goals now he's got, maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, he followed that ball in, anticipating Siegrist to drop it.
Yeah, and I think out his 8 goals, maybe 6 or 7 possibly are front post finishes or one-touch finishes. So when he gets in there, that's the problem when he has to take 2 free touches. It's no, mate. But with those one-touch finishes, but the thing I love about him is the work rate is unbelievable.
Yeah. The amount of times he was in midfield recovering that ball for us.
The pressing's brilliant. He puts his body about. He holds the ball up, goes down very easily and wins those free kicks that we always give away like that, and he gets in goal scoring positions. I can live with the technique being poor sometimes if you're doing everything else right, because we've seen so many strikers over the years at Celtic that are terrible at everything and they never look like scoring. But with him, Maeda, they get into dangerous positions, and if you keep doing that, Celtic will create chances and you'll get them. And look, you can maybe say some of the finishes are lucky, but to be lucky, you need to be in those positions, and he keeps being in those positions. So if Celtic continue to play the way they're playing under Ange, Maeda and Giakoumakis, even if they're not having great games, they'll score goals.
Yeah. And the reality of it is, Ange obviously sees him as third choice striker behind Kyogo and Maeda, probably.
Oh, I don't know about third choice, possibly.
I think if everyone was fit, it's probably Maeda starts against Giakoumakis.
Aye, possibly. I hadn't really occurred to me, but Maeda probably considers himself, or has the
an
right
embarrassment
to
of
consider
riches. Some might say,
it's an embarrassment of riches, and with a Yeti coming back to full fitness on the bench,
That tips over the scale.
Just options, so many options that aren't a Yeti up there. But Maeda and Giakoumakis, they're quite odd players. They're quite unusual players. Giakoumakis, everything we describe about him, it makes him sound like he's this sort of 90s centre forward, like a big kind of traditional British number 9. He's a big guy, he gets stuck in about it, he makes himself a nuisance in the box, but that's not what he is.
No.
He's not one of these guys. He's not like John Hartson or something like that, who's just lives in the box and makes himself a physical presence and all that. He's so much more than that. In some aspects a lot less than that as well, but he's a very useful player. Maeda is similar in that sometimes things just don't click for him, but he works so hard that he almost makes his own luck as well, and he's picking up these opportunities that he has created for himself just by picking up space. Like his last goal that he scored was off a Starfelt header that he just picked up a position at the back post and just walked it in at that opportunity. So yeah, these guys are working so hard that it is benefiting Celtic at the moment. They might not come across like that Kyogo's it's an unfair comparison because he's
that's what I was going to say. Is it because of Kyogo? Well, looking at these guys going, if it had been the other way about and Maeda and Giakoumakis had been there at the start of the season, then Kyogo comes in, do we think these are good players? And then Kyogo, he's a brilliant player because we've been so... it is an embarrassment of riches with Kyogo. He is absolutely brilliant, and then these guys are coming in, they're not as good. That's not their fault. It's not a slight on them, but you're just looking at Kyogo going, you are brilliant, and then these guys come in, they're not quite as polished as Kyogo. We're maybe comparing them, which is unfair on them.
I do think if Kyogo wasn't here, we'd still look at these two and go, they're good, they're contributing with goals, but can we maybe find someone better?
Yeah,
I think that would probably be our view of it. We're speaking of options. Jullien's made a couple of returns to the bench, but no sign of first team football for him. Do you think Ange doesn't rate him? Do you think he's unfit? Do you think he's got maybe a future at the club? Stephen is getting on a bit.
Will be 29 maybe soon, 28, 29. I'm not sure.
Oh, I think he might be 30 soon.
Is that right? All right. Well, because we signed him at about 26, 27. He's been here quite a while now. The Jullien, it's quite an odd situation because I think everyone was desperate to see him back in the team. His long road from injury, was so lengthy that we were desperate to see him back, and it was such a relief to see him take to the field. But that's all kind of died down now because we've not got any room for this kind of level of sentiment or anything like that. We have to pick the best team, the most effective team to get the job done. And Jullien has been a kind of victim of the form of our two centre-halves, despite what the media or the commentary team seem to be saying about our centre-halves.
A clean sheet.
It's another clean sheet, another two good performances. I can't be bothered doing the let's defend Starfield thing. Take it as read.
They're good players.
Yes,
right?
Okay. Take it as read. They're both performing extremely well, and under huge pressure, they're performing well. One thing though, as I said, we weren't going to talk about this, but if I had one choice, could we stop that pass from Joe Hart back to the corner flag?
I mean, definitely
stop playing the ball behind him.
Yes.
Joe.
Yeah, definitely stop that. But just on to Jullien, do you think he's on borrowed time at Celtic?
I think we might be in the gradual procession towards him leaving the club. I don't know how he gets back into the team from here because you can't break up that partnership. Now, if you're going to rest one of them, Welsh comes in. I think Welsh comes in. Welsh has played games recently where Jullien has been available for. So either he's not quite ready in terms of fitness, but if he wasn't, I don't think he would be on the bench. I don't really see that. I don't know how you break up this partnership with so many crucial games still to go. At the end of the season, Carter Vickers will have possibly a decision to make. Celtic have got a decision to make on it, whether they go for him permanently or whether they just let him go. But
They don't really, do they?
Yeah, well, maybe. Does Jullien replace him? I don't know.
I mean, the rumours are that Ange doesn't really rate Jullien, or I just think, as you say, Julien's got a long road back, because if you think of he's got to get himself fit, right? But not just fit to play football. He's not been able to train. He's not had minutes on the training field to get this Ange Postecoglou. I'm not saying the word, but Ange Postecoglou's way of playing football into him, and I just think it'd be too much a risk. I think he's probably last resort in there because Welsh knows how the manager likes to play. He's had minutes. He's fit. I just think it's a long road back.
Well, I speculated at the time. I think it was before he even came back into the squad that we're building this up a lot as fans because Jullien's a popular guy. Yeah. He's a big character and he's scored big goals for Celtic and had big performances. But I said that at the time that Ange just might not be that bothered about it. He's not in the same position as us where we've been on the journey with this guy and we've seen his injury and we've felt bad for him. Ange is there to just win football games, and it's not really his concern to sort of satisfy the sentimentality of the fans. Jullien, I'm sure that Ange rates him as a player because he's a good footballer, but a guy at his age and not playing football at all, is he going to want to stay? Like, we can talk about how he'll be good next season. He might be a key player, but does he want to hang about for another season here when he could probably go back to France, get a decent? I don't know. I could only speculate there, but I feel like there's a few players in the team and the squad now where we are just sort of getting towards the end of their time, and he's probably another one.
It's his birthday next week. Happy birthday!
Oh.
29 next week. I just checked. That Stephen's mentioned that central defensive partnership is going to be very difficult to break up. But I think this pass that Joe Hart loves to play behind Carl Starfelt, you could see this is giving Starfelt a bad name because you can see him physically flat, but like trying to position his body and get his body in the right position to receive the ball because it's not a good pass, and then by that time the players close them down and he just wants shot at it. Luckily though, on a number of occasions yesterday, Greg Taylor was there, who is becoming the pinnacle of composure at that left back position to help out his teammate.
Yeah, Starfelt, like, come on, Joe, give him a chance. Yeah. He's a right-footed centre half playing on the left, and you're playing it behind him into a corner where he's really got nowhere to go apart from back to you and then find the space. But Greg Taylor last night, brilliant. The two fullbacks I thought were brilliant. The energy and drive they showed to get up and down, their passing and when they moved into the centre of midfield, brilliant. I thought Greg Taylor, and I think Anthony Ralston can feel hard done by after a good performance against Livingston. Juranovic comes in, so it's good that we've got options there and guys keeping each other on their toes, because like Greg Taylor's probably the one guy when you look at the Celtic 11 and go, Next season, probably the guy that we all want to see upgraded. But when he's putting in performances like this, he's like, not really put a foot wrong apart from the 2 European games this year. So he's doing really well. He's cementing his place as that left back just now. He just needs to keep this consistency, because if he keeps this up, he'll possibly change a lot of people's minds, because he is one of those guys where, despite his size and his physicality, he's one of the ones that gets stuck in, isn't he? He's not scared to put it about, and he's good on the ball. This inverted fullback suits him much better than that sort of Kieran Tierney style fullback that goes on the outside and whips in crosses. So it suits his game, and if he's doing everything Ange asked him to, probably a wee bit more right now, then he's up for playing. And this back line, whether you put in Ralston or you put in Juranovic, they're keeping clean sheets right now. So it's one switch in and out. But as Stephen said, there, like 8 days between this game. We've got 5 till the next one, and then we've got an international break. It's not as if we need to chop and change for the sake of it. After that Livingston game, you'd have maybe thought Ange will just play the same team again because it worked well, but he obviously played that team to play the conditions on that pitch. And then you come into this game where Dundee United are a bit more physical and energetic in midfield, so he changes it up and brings in Hatate and O'Reilly, and he's getting it right. We're getting the victories in these games now, so no complaints from this bear.
Patreon.com /20minute Tims, patreon.com /20minute Tims. There'll be a wee link in the description, whether you're listening to podcast or whether you're listening or watching on YouTube. There will be a link there. You can support us and get extra content, podcasts, videos, writing. We talk about it every week, so not going to give you the long boring pitch. Just check it out. If you enjoy what we do here, you can support us from like $2.50 a month. Thank you to everyone who does. Stephen, we got through the tie.
Yep.
The draw was immediately after the game, and you just knew, didn't you? You just knew we were going to get Rangers. It is Rangers in the semi-final at Hampden. It's going to be a massive 4 weeks for us. The whole season is basically going to culminate in these 4 weeks, isn't it?
Would now potentially play them 3 times in the space of a couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty intense period for Celtic. So,
how much do you care about the Scottish Cup?
No, once you get to the semi, it becomes a huge thing on the horizon. I don't think there's any getting away from that. I think if we'd gone out in one of the earlier stages, I think we could all have justified it to ourselves by saying, it's all about the league, or that's stuff you comfort yourself with when you go out of competitions, despite the fact I don't really believe that. But now I've got to the semi and it's against Rangers. All guns are blazing, firing on all syllables.
I think I think it's going to be a ferocious tie, isn't it? Because after the game, our esteemed colleague, our esteemed commentary team, rather, was saying, Rangers have really bounced back since losing at the Glasgow Derby. I don't really think they have.
No.
I don't really think they have. They've been doing okay in Europe, and as far as I'm concerned, the more games they have, the better. In terms of helping us in the league, Melly. But how do you feel about them in the semi?
It'll be a tough game, I think. They've not been great in the league, but the European form, I'd love to beat Dortmund, man. Why can't we do stuff like that?
I know.
So, and then they had another good result last week, but saying that, man. So it's going to be difficult. They seem to be better against the better teams, so we're obviously one of the best. Easter Sunday, man. Come on. You're playing them, and then look, the chance to go, what have we got? 8 games in the league, and then potentially 2 in the cup. 10 games. 10
this
games
season's
to
flown
win.
in, isn't it? It's absolutely flown in.
And that's the thing, isn't it? You get to this end of the season where you're like, missing having those 2 games a week. But now that we can prepare for each game individually, and
how crucial do you think that's going to be?
The Rangers,
the space in between the games, the time on the training pitch, the not having the potential distraction of Europe.
Hopefully it's good. It's one of those ones where it's good if you win the game, you go, yes, that's us, because we had that space in between. If Rangers are coming into the game off winning a European game, the momentum of that will be good for them. But with Celtic, that's always been, we need more time in the training pitch. We've got so many games, so many injuries. Now that we're getting players back, it could be Jota could be back at the weekend, Abada probably back. Turnbull's back training today, I think Ange said last week they've been back training. There's rumours that Kyogo was running at Lennoxtown today. So if we can get after this international break and have Kyogo and Turnbull back for these games, it gives us options. And look, we've seen it so many games this season where we haven't had options off the bench. Well, Forrest now an option, Turnbull, Kyogo, Abada, Jota, Karamoko Dembele came on and contributed. Ayeti.
Stephen, it's not going to happen.
Stop trying to make Ayeti happen.
So if we're coming into these games with a full squad and a week to prepare, you're really looking at Celtic and don't have any excuses we had at the start of the season. So it's the potential to be an absolute cracking season.
It's going to be some good podcasts, especially on Patreon. Get your ass over there. I mean, it's just I'm really looking forward to it. But part of me is like, I'm such a pessimist. So sometimes, Stephen, I'm like, right, 3 games against Rangers. We can't win all 3, can we? So if we're going to lose one, I'd happily throw the Scottish Cup under the bus.
Aye, basically.
I know that's not how it works.
Yeah, I know. Given the choice, if you were to make a pact with the devil or something like that, then yeah, that's the one you would throw. But no, once you get to the semis, man, we need to go full throttle, full throttle here. We need to absolutely go for it.
That's like my thinking as well. So, right, teams are quite tight. Right, lose one, we'll lose this cup semi. We'll draw at Ibrox and we'll win one at Celtic Park. That's because of that 90s again. You're just programmed that you're not going to beat them 3 times in a month.
But this mentality, there's a man out there who does not have that mentality.
All right.
His name's Scott Brown.
Oh, yeah, I thought you were going to go Ange there.
No, well, Ange as well. Well, maybe there's a good match because that's a conversation we're just about to have. Is Scott Brown left Aberdeen? I think Jim Goodwin's obviously said, look, no offence, thanks very much, but I don't really see a future for you here. He's decided that he's not going to get the time on the coaching field either. Scott Brown said he went up to Aberdeen to play and coach, and he was basically told he's not really going to get to coach and he's not really going to get to play, so he's retired. Undoubtedly a Celtic legend. We don't need to have the big long chat, Stephen, because we had that when he left Celtic.
Yes.
But it's worth bringing up again. Absolute Celtic legend, and I'm intrigued to see Scott Brown's next move, because I think a lot of people suspect that Scott Brown hasn't got like a footballing brain, and they don't really see him moving into management or coaching or whatever. They just think he's an on-field guy. So I'm quite interested to see Scott Brown's next move, because he was doing a lot with the youths when he was at Celtic. So he's obviously keen to pursue a coaching role.
Yeah, he'll definitely have options. There was a bit of chat that he'd been linked with Leicester. Like there was maybe Brendan Rodgers had sounded him out about going there.
Needs all the help he can get.
Pish for Brendan.
Yeah,
usual.
If that is possible, though, definitely go there. Definitely don't go to Cyprus. But the chat about potentially coming back to Celtic just now, I'm not particularly interested in that yet. I think I'd be open to it eventually.
Too much of a distraction, isn't it?
100%, yeah. I could not be doing with every time Celtic have a mediocre or bad result, get Bruni in the dugout, he knows what it takes, he's better than that Kennedy, that Strachan. I can't be bothered.
It would be the opposite. See if Celtic have a bad result, it would be that's Scott Brown. He does what does Scott Brown know about data and statistics? He's not a Ange pick. Ange would never blah blah blah.
Speaking of the other way around, imagine John Kennedy had just been effectively punted for Aberdeen with 8 games to go in the season. Would you be like, get him in, he knows what it takes? Absolutely not. I wouldn't be closing the door to Scott Brown. I think he would probably be a great coach, but at this point of the season, you don't parachute a guy into basically the dugout. And the thing about Scott Brown, everybody says like we need to find a place for him under 18s or something like that. He's beyond that, surely. If he's any kind of decent, I mean, I know Sean Maloney had that and then went on to much bigger things at Belgium and now Hibs and all that. But I don't know if he's going to be interested in something like that after being basically effectively an assistant manager.
He's better than that, is what you're saying, isn't it? He's better than that.
But absolutely not interested in it just now at all. We need to get this season out of the way. I think what is absolutely crucial, though, is if Scott Brown is to come back to Celtic in any capacity whatsoever, it's not through, the fans, just get him in, he knows what it takes. None of that pish. It's got to be Ange Postecoglou. Ange has got to see some value to adding him to the coaching staff.
Funny you mentioned that, because I don't think it would ever be pressure for the fans that would get Scott Brown in. I think it would probably be more from inside the club.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Get Bruni back, we like him, he knows blah blah blah. Whereas bottom line, if he comes back, it needs to be because Ange wants him here.
Yeah, that's it.
What do you make of Bruni's departure from Aberdeen?
Yeah, I thought it was a bit strange, but with the managerial change and the fact that he's not going to get to coach, the fact that he's not going to get to do the coaching at first team level anymore, it kind of maybe rules out Celtic for the time being for me, because he's not going to. He has done the under 18 thing before and then stopped doing that to concentrate back on his playing days again at Celtic. So I just don't see him going from being disappointed he's not getting first team coaching to coming into Celtic, because I don't see him parachuting into the first team. It'd probably be the B team or the under 19s or 18s or whatever. So I don't think it's the right time to bring somebody in unless it's at that sort of lower level for Celtic. And Scott Brown can take a bit of time to make a choice, because at the end of the season there'll be post coming up. So if he jumps back into Celtic, he might rule himself out of a managerial job somewhere along the line, because Scott Brown would be a coup for any sort of team bringing him in. Like, you've seen Sean Maloney get a job, you've seen guys given chances. Scott Brown, sorry. The experience that guy has in Scottish football is unparalleled to any other player that's probably retired in the last 10, 20 years. He's been there and done it all, so he's got a lot to call on. He's a popular guy, he seems to be a very popular coach as well, so I think he might just take his time on this one and wait it out to the end of the season, see what his options are, because there should be some decent teams wanting them.
Speaking of popular coaches, Celtic legends and guys with a lot of gift to the game, Neil Lennon has got a new job in Cyprus. And look, do you know what? I think enough time has passed that you can do what you like, right? But I'm not going to sit here and slag Neil Lennon. I think Neil Lennon, as the football manager, right, deserves a lot better than some backwater in Cyprus that he's got just now. I think he's got a lot to give to the game. One disastrous season at Celtic, but prior to that, 2 good seasons, won a treble, whatever way you want to slice it up. Obviously, we all know what happened the 10-in-a-row season and the stress and implosion that happened in front of the TV cameras with that and the turn against the fans and all that sort of stuff. But purely based on football management ability, I want to see Neil Lennon do well. I want to see him do well in Cyprus. I want to see him reinvent himself. I'd be very surprised. In many ways, I want to see him broaden his horizons, Stephen. I know none of you really are Neil Lennon fans as much as I am, but I want to see him broaden his horizons, because I don't think there's not really a path from back to Scottish football. There's too much baggage there. So to do well abroad, become maybe a sort of latter-day Roy Hodgson, just go like Switzerland, Finland. Just he could have a good management career, but there's also part of me that thinks this is maybe last chance saloon for Neil Lennon, the manager, and if he doesn't go here, and I wonder, is he picked wisely? I don't really know an awful lot about ammonia, but if you go to Cyprus and fail, is that it, kind of thing?
It's not a traditionally successful route for UK based managers to go to.
I think Henning Berg was the last manager.
Was it? To go to these, you hear about some British or like English managers who end up in Scandinavia or something like that and do a decent job. Graham Potter was there for a bit and all that. But after a year away, Neil Lennon ended up in Cyprus. Is it a good move? Is it literally all he had to get back into football? Probably. What I would say about his potential of getting back to something resembling top level football, what tends to happen is that clubs, when looking for a manager, will probably look beyond, is he a quote good manager, whatever that means in this day and age, and we'll look at a manager's reputation with the use of methods. And I think that's what holds Neil Lennon back. Again, I'm not going to go down the route of just like totally slating the guy. I'm not going to call him a dinosaur or anything like that, but there's an awful lot of smoke for there not to be fire when it comes to Neil Lennon's methods in modern day football. Can he manage a club that isn't the best in the country, in any given country? I don't know. He's been in England, he's been at Hibs, and even to this day, there's still stories. And it was that David Wheater was on a popular podcast recently, and he was talking about how Neil Lennon, the first thing he said about him was he loves a pint. And that follows Neil Lennon around. That's not me being like unfair or anything like that. That's basically what follows him around. There was chat about how the players would be dumb with training and he'd be turning up to the training ground at Bolton and all that. So he needs to get rid of all that stuff, and he needs to prove that he has that sounds pish, right? But a modern approach to football rather than just being the guy who G's everybody up and can carry on a winning formula to a point before it goes off a cliff, because that's what he proved last season that he couldn't do. So I hope he does well. I don't see it working for him in Cyprus because, again, just traditionally, just historically, it doesn't really tend to work when that happens. I can see him making a number of disastrous signings from Scotland, because that's what Scottish-based managers tend to do. They just start signing Hibs players.
To be fair to Neil Lennon, he was never shy of an obscure signing from some odd part of the world.
Yeah, that's right. What I mean? Even at Hibs, he had a few of those as well. But good luck to him. I think they very nearly got a big win in his first game in the dugout, but it was a 92nd minute equaliser to get a draw. So he has a 0% winning ratio at the moment.
In summation, I think Neil Lennon, Neil Lennon's a better manager than people give him credit for. I just want him to prove that. That's basically what I want to see from Neil Lennon's next chapter.
Yeah. Be difficult out there, won't it? Because the strengths Neil Lennon has.
I thought you were going to say the sun, because he is a pale man.
It's 45 degrees in the summer or whatever.
I can sympathise with him there. So Neil Lennon's strengths are the motivation, the G'ing players up, and that might get lost in Cyprus with the language barrier, the sort of lifestyle as well. It's totally different. So
universal language of snarling. That works wherever you
snarling Lenny, but I hope he does well. I hope it works out for him because
you can't assume he learned nothing from his time at Celtic last season. You can't assume that he looked at that and went, right, maybe I made mistakes here and there, and he wants to change his approach slightly.
Yeah, but we can change that approach, but that's not the approach I'd be really wanting Neil Lennon to change. It be the tactical side of it, maybe, and I don't know how that will come across over there. I hope he does well, but just one of those ones. I don't really see it happening. He might get them through at the end of the season and do all right, but long term, I just don't see it happening for him there.
Ben Doak.
Yeah,
it looks like he's on his way to Liverpool. You hate to see youth prospects leave the club, especially ones that have looked quite promising. But at the same time, it's Liverpool. If he was leaving to go to a Fulham or one of these sort of other, even like a Leeds or Wolves, one of these clubs, you'd be like, what are you doing? Come on, weekend. But he's going to Liverpool now. Who knows if he'll ever play for Liverpool? He'll probably spend, what age is he, 16? He could spend the next 5 or 6 years on loan at various other clubs. He's no doubt going to be a very, very wealthy young man. His life will be taken care of with the signing of this contract and all that. But it just smarts a bit, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, the thing with these, it happens quite a lot now with Celtic. In the last couple of seasons, we've lost players to Bayern Munich, to Man City, and I think previously another one to Liverpool. Was that a goalkeeper? I can't remember the name. Went to Liverpool. Yeah, went to Liverpool. And when it happens, there's a rush to apportion blame to what's gone wrong here, what's wrong with Celtic's youth setup, what's wrong with the advice he's getting, what's wrong with the agent, what's wrong with his ambitions. Sometimes I think there's very little anyone can do about a boy. I was going to say a guy, right? He's 16, a wee boy, right? Nothing anyone could do about a boy who
can't even buy fags.
Doesn't have a contract. He doesn't have a professional contract with Celtic, wanting to go and sign for Liverpool. Now, people can say, but Celtic can offer them this, but I struggle to see what Celtic can possibly offer him that Liverpool can't do better. Now, this is, again, I'm not talking about big clubs and all that, whatever that even means in modern football, right? I'm talking about Liverpool, who are one of the 3 best teams in the world right now, or one of the best teams in Europe, certainly. Everything they have got is better than Celtic, and I say that as a Celtic fan. It hurts to say things like that, but their facilities, their coaches, and all that will all be better than what you can get at Celtic. Now, it could be argued that he might have a better pathway to first team action with Celtic. But I don't know about that. I don't know if we've necessarily proven that.
I think he's more likely to get first team football at Celtic purely on the basis that there won't be as many better players in his road. Celtic don't have the ability to go out and spend 40 million quid on a player in the same position. We might have to look at bringing somebody through, but these are small. That's a very, very small margin. You can't say to the guy, look, picture yourself in 5 years. For us, you could be playing for Celtic in 5 years. Liverpool, you might not be making first team appearances because he's going to back himself, isn't he?
Oh, definitely. And if he's backing himself, fair play to the guy. And look, really, I think the only thing Celtic can offer these guys is you're a Celtic fan, why you can play for the club. Because if I'm looking at it objectively, right, going down to Liverpool, why would that be better than Celtic? Well, you've got better coaches, probably better facilities, you're obviously earning more money, and for a 16-year-old boy, that's it. But also, look, the opposition, if he's down there at Liverpool, he's going to be playing against better players week in, week out. And if you're 16-year-old, how many 16-year-olds like Dembele, Islam Ferrouz, how many of these guys were superstars at that age, going to be the next big thing, but they just sort of stagnate? If you're down at Liverpool with all the best stuff, there's no excuse for you not to be a first-team player. Now, I'm not meaning he'll play for Liverpool, but because of the way English football is, Chelsea's a good example. The amount of players that go like Liveramento and Broja, who are currently on loan at Southampton, I think one of them signed, like they went to Chelsea, done a bit at Chelsea, got loans, and now they're getting a move to a Premier League team, and they'll probably in a couple of years be in one of the top 4 teams. A lot of these players will probably see that as a way to get to first team football, whereas at Celtic, I don't have kind of a problem with this, or we don't have a pathway. I can't think of any youth players at Celtic have left Celtic that didn't go to a big team that we've regretted or we didn't give a chance, because They don't. If players are good enough, they'll play.
Yeah, that's it.
Tony Ralston's playing, McGregor's playing, James Forrest playing, Karamoko Nibeli's playing, Mikey Johnson gets minutes this year, Ben Doak gets minutes this year. We've seen Stephen Welsh. There's plenty of players played for Celtic. We've bought players in from Scotland, given them that path. We've sold on a lot of young players as well. So I don't think the pathway hangs for Celtic, because you can't say to a guy, right, at 17 you'll move up to the B team, at 18 you'll be in the first team, and then by 19 you'll be a first team player, because that's not how football works. You need to earn that chance. And if he's looking at from Ben Doak's point of view, he'll be thinking, if I go down and work with the best coaches at the best facilities against the best players, I should become a better player.
How do I become the best footballer I can be? Do I do that at Liverpool or do I do that at Celtic? Now, Celtic's not a bad option.
No.
You know, if you've got a choice, you know, Celtic are probably one of the top 10 clubs in Europe, or top 10% of the clubs in Europe where you can come and become a footballer. Do you know what I mean? And you know, if your options are, they're certainly the best in Scotland. They're probably a better option than the majority of teams in the Championship and League One. That's why we end up with club players like Matt O'Reilly coming to us instead of staying where he's staying. But when you're up against Liverpool, there's really not much you can do.
That's it. And I think we might be over, talking a little bit too much about a guy who's played probably a grand total of about 30 minutes for Celtic, and he's 16 years old. But in many ways, it's not really about him. It's about the whole system and how it really works. One thing I would also add is that it might be quite annoying, quite irritating to lose players to clubs higher up the ladder than us. And as I say, it's happened several times over the last couple of seasons. But what we need to remember is that it is a ladder, and Celtic make huge benefit from this as well. See, when we take a player like Bozon Lawal, who's currently in the B team from Watford, there will be probably a Watford podcast sitting there going and say, oh, you should have stayed at Watford. That you're ruining your career. Your best chance was to stay here. We've got this coach. Right, so
people at Fulham are saying about Matt O'Reilly.
Exactly.
So MK Dons, rather, sorry.
So Celtic we're not at the top of it, and we're always at risk of these clubs coming in and nicking our best talent, but we're not at the bottom of it either, and we do it the way down. So yeah, it's unfortunate. And again, it's not really about Ben Doak, it's about the inner workings of football here. I don't really think there's an awful lot that can be done here, because I've heard it argued as well that he's getting minutes at Celtic, so he should stay. But I can also remember Jack Aitchison getting minutes for Celtic, and then he just rotted for about 3 seasons, and then eventually went down several levels. To be honest, I don't know where he currently is.
See, sometimes as well, like, it's detrimental to a player to get minutes, because look at Mikey Johnson, Karamoko Dembele playing like in the last game of the season for a couple of minutes, and then constantly after that, where's this player? He's obviously not progressing. Whereas because you come on at like 16, 17 and get a couple of minutes in a meaningless game at the end of the season, doesn't mean you're just going to be in the first team next season. Not everybody is. Aidan McGeady, where that happened to him, he was just a superstar at that age and progressed. But some players take different time, and I still think at certain points in Scotland, Scottish players and players at Celtic, Forrest, McGregor, it takes them a wee bit longer to develop, because they don't become first team players till they're 22, 23, 24 maybe. So Ben Doak's probably just looking at it like from his point of view and going, my best chance is going down there, because we've seen players go to Bayern, Liverpool, Man City. I can't really grumble at that, man.
But Andrew was asked about him. He says, look, I've said all along, I'm only wanting to talk about and work with players that want to be here, and for ones that don't, there's a path out of the way for them, which sort of says, he's on his way. But one thing that comment did highlight to me was perhaps there's a future at the club for Dembele. He's been getting time. We all know his contract's up at the end. That was in limbo a wee bit, but I think by virtue of the fact that Ange is playing him, he's still playing him, he's playing him in games and he's contributing, makes me think that maybe there might be some positivity around Dembele.
Yeah, it's a strange one with Dembele. I seen him last week in the Glasgow Cup game for the B team against Thistle, and he was outstanding in some things, and you're just like, too good for the B team, just not quite there with the first team yet. I think if he did sign a contract...
Fraud is what you're saying.
Him and Mikey Johnson were both brilliant last week, and I think if he did sign a contract, I think he'd get more opportunities next season, possibly take over James Forrest, but it's a weird one for him as well. He's been sort of parachuted up with as a sort of superstar, yet
parachuted up.
Yeah,
is that what,
Stephen? What is the one defining characteristic of a parachute? It's used for travelling only one direction.
Yeah, he's so good. He's defying the laws of physics and travelling upwards with a parachute.
Was he so small as well? He'd fly up there quicker.
Not having it.
It's made of helium.
Because parachute was mentioned earlier, let's pull it in my head. Right. So he's been sort of
parachuted up.
parachuted up as if he's going to be this first team superstar, but 19 now, and he's barely played. Well, he's not even had 10 starts for the first team, I don't think.
They get pushed right off the ball at Dundee United, right? And it's no his fault, he's wee, but it was definitely a penalty. The guy just went, "Give that ball, you," in the box. Like, can he do that?
One-handed shove straight over, I know.
That's what he's up against, the physicality, but he does have the skill, he does have the technique, but just where he's going to be. I think if he stayed with Celtic, he would get a chance next year, but with him being parachuted up, it means that he's probably got a higher opinion of where he should be by now. But at the same time, if he leaves Celtic in a Bosman, he will get another team at the end of the season, no bother. But I don't think he's going to play first team football there unless he goes down a level. So it's a strange one for him. But I think the best thing he could do is sign maybe a 2-year deal at Celtic, take his chances next season.
I think the thing about Celtic is gets you visibility, doesn't it? Especially for the national team. There's Matt O'Reilly called up to the Denmark squad.
Yeah.
Under 21, man. I'm like looking at the guy going, shit, he's under 21, man. You forget how young he is.
I remember it was one of these, I think it was the fan media thing that Matt O'Reilly did quite recently, available on our YouTube channel. You can just get, if you're watching this, it's a few videos ago. But I think he said at the time, he was asked about his national allegiances, and I think he's available, he's eligible for
Denmark, Norway and England.
Yeah, he's eligible for a couple of countries through his parents, and he said basically at the time that he hadn't really decided, but he kind of played he showed his cards. He said, if Denmark asked me, I'm not exactly going to say no, am I? So the absolute flirt that he is come get me eyes. He was getting into Denmark. So yeah, I'm tough for him. He's been in, he's done really well for Celtic. I think he was good against Dundee United as well. Another one who, as I say, doesn't shy away from the physical battle. So yeah, delighted for him. It's very odd to have a guy like that with his accent, and we could have like a Danish international. It's quite odd like that. But yeah, just award for how he's been playing.
Ross County the weekend, Malky Mackay has turned around that team. They're now performing quite well. It's going to be tricky. Every game's going to be tricky from now at the run in, Stephen.
Yeah. They're all cup finals.
Do you know what?
Apart from the semi-finals.
It's probably not going to be. It's probably not going to be tricky, right? But I'm just too much of a shite bag to sit here on a podcast and call it a breeze. So I just want to like keep my cards close to my chest and play well with the universe and just say, it's going to be a tricky one, but it's going to be less. That's going to be really tricky.
Well, for once, I actually got my prediction right ahead of the game yesterday. I said 3-0. I kind of hummed and hawed about it. I wasn't really sure how it was going to go against Dundee United, but I said, let's get the job done 3-0. And I think it's probably the first time all season I've actually had one right there. Going into Ross County, I'm still going to. Right up to the game, I'm still going to be like, this is going to be dead. This is going to be
big
dead.
Big chance to go 6 points clear, but before they play on the Sunday.
Exactly, and that's where the advantage comes in, isn't it? The advantage comes in being able to put the pressure on, and that's basically all we can do at this moment in time. We can just keep winning games, keep extending, hopefully, the lead, racking up a few goals, maybe put in a little extra on that goal difference tally. So yeah, it's a good opportunity. Can't take it for granted, simply can't at this. So treating it as a tricky game, because quite frankly, Ross County deserve to be treated with a wee bit of respect. Not so much personally, but,
I was about to say,
but professionally, at least I think they deserve to be taken seriously. And yeah, I'm quite looking forward to it, I have to say.
Put the pressure on, go 6 points clear, and
who are they playing? Dundee again?
Away to Dundee, the league.
Always Dundee in it.
Well, they've got Dundee and Red Star. I think that's their next 4 ties.
So if we go 6 points clear after a European game where they've got a trip, who knows what will happen? They'll probably.
Dundee.
They'll win.
I don't think Mark McGee's won a game up there yet. Absolutely crap.
The thing is, we just need to try and get this gap the same before, because going into the international break after that, it's the big one at Ibrox as well, isn't it? So
hopefully Q will go back for that. And you did say after the international break we can expect Kyogo and Dave
Turners, that'd be good as well.
And on that, we shall wrap up this flagship episode of 20 Minute Tims. Thank you so much for watching and listening. As usual, if you'd like to support this podcast, patreon.com/20 Minute Tims. There are links on the podcast apps and on YouTube. And if you're watching YouTube, feel free to subscribe so you get the video as soon as it comes out. But most of all, thanks for watching and listening.